Hello everyone, my name's Kalu and welcome to my Bard Guide for Stormblood. I'll be going over all of the abilities and how the job functions in the new expansion. Firstly, let's go over your role. As a Bard, your role is a ranged damage dealer. You want to be doing as much damage as you can while also supporting your party with your unique abilities. Instead of having a set rotation like most jobs, Bard functions on more of a priority system to deal as much damage as possible. You want to focus on keeping your damage over time, or dot skills, up on an enemy, keeping buffs up on yourself, and using your damaging skills whenever you don't have to reapply your dots or your buffs. Starting off at level 1, you get your first weapon skill, Heavy Shot. Heavy Shot's your main filler ability to deal damage with. Use this whenever you don't have to rebuff, refresh your dots, or if you don't get a proc. Moving on to level 2, we have Straight Shot. This skill will grant you a 10% critical chance buff, meaning that you can do higher damage more often. However, it does have a lower potency than Heavy Shot, so you'll only want to use this if you need the buff or if you get a Straighter Shot proc. Next at level 4, we get our first off global cooldown ability, Raging Strikes. This ability grants a 10% damage buff for 20 seconds, meaning that all of your attacks are stronger every time you use it. This effect applies to all damage, including your dots. However, it'll only work on them if you apply or reapply your dots after you've used this ability. At level 6, we get our first damage over time ability, Venomous Bite. This attack will leave a debuff on the enemy that will deal damage over the course of its duration. These debuffs don't stack however, so you'll want to only apply this once, like Straight Shot, then reapply as necessary. Damage over time is a high portion of the Bard kit, so be sure to learn how long each of them last. At level 10, we get our first damaging off global called Misery's End. This ability is an execution skill that can only be activated when your enemy is below 20% health. This is one of many damaging abilities that can be used off the global cooldown, so be sure to learn the timings to use them effectively. Next we have Bloodletter at level 12. This is a simple off global that just deals extra damage every 15 seconds. Be sure to use this on cooldown to deal as much damage as possible. Now at level 15 we learn Repelling Shot. This ability is used to reposition yourself away from an enemy or a group of enemies. It's a great tool to avoid AoEs that saved me multiple times. I highly recommend learning how to use this and apply it in different fights. At level 18, we learn our first area of effect skill, Quick Knock. Quick Knock is a target-based AoE that shoots out in a cone in front of you towards a targeted enemy. It's great for large groups of enemies, as you can more easily defeat multiple enemies faster than if you were to attack them one at a time. It does come at a high TP cost however, so be careful how you use this. If you run out of TP, you won't be doing any damage at all. The next skill we get is Wind Bite at level 30. This is your second dot ability to complement Venomous Bite. This skill has a lower initial attack than Venomous Bite, but higher damage over time. Use this alongside Venomous Bite to deal a lot of damage over time against high HP monsters, but against low HP monsters, you're better off with just using Venomous Bite. Finally, at level 38, we learn Barrage. Barrage is a fantastic ability that triples the amount of hits that one of your attacks inflicts. So if you use this with Heavy Shot, it'll fire Heavy Shot 3 times at once. However, this will only affect weapon skills like Heavy Shot and Straight Shot, but not abilities like Bloodletter and Misery's End. It's a wonderful ability that combos well with the job's actions, but be sure not to use this with dot abilities, as their effect will only apply once. Now moving away from the basic abilities, we have our job actions. The first job action is learned at level 30 and it's our first song, Mage's Ballad. All songs will grant your party members a 2% critical chance buff so long as they're in range of you. Mage's Ballad is a targeted ability that will deal a small amount of damage, however it will now reset the cooldown of your Bloodletter timer every time your dots do critical damage over its duration. Mage's Ballad has an 80-second cooldown which will be important to know as you gain each of your song abilities. Our next ability is Foe Requiem at level 35. It's an AoE debuff that causes your allies to deal 3% more damage to enemies in range. It's a passive debuff that's useful if you need a little extra damage to deal with enemies, but you can only use this if you have enough MP to sustain it. At level 40, we learn our second song, Army's Paean. This will grant you stacks of repertoire every time your dots crit against an opponent. Each stack will increase your auto attack speed as well as reduce your global cooldown timer by 4%, stacking up to 16% at 4 stacks. At level 45, we learn Reign of Death. This ability shares a cooldown with Bloodletter, so you can use either one or the other. It deals damage in an AoE around your target, so use this on multiple enemies rather than just one. This means that if you have 2 or more enemies that you're fighting, it'll do a lot more damage than Bloodletter. This ability is also affected by Mage's Ballad, meaning that it'll have its cooldown reset from your dots critting. Now at level 50, we learn Battle Voice. Battle Voice will increase the direct hit chance of your allies by 15%. This ability only works on allies that are in range of your song buffs. Direct hits are basically smaller crits that happen more often, so try to use this ability on cooldown or save it if you need extra damage during a certain phase of a boss fight. Now moving into the Heavensward abilities, we learn our third and final song, Wanderer's Minuet at level 52. Now that you have your final song, you'll be able to rotate between the 3 songs throughout a fight, granting your party a permanent 2% critical chance increase. Using this song will grant you stacks of repertoire that can be used to activate the ability Pitch Perfect. Pitch Perfect is learned along with Wanderers and is a single target attack that deals damage based on how many stacks of repertoire you have. At 1 stack it deals weak damage, 2 stacks moderate, and 3 stacks will deal massive damage. I recommend holding onto your stacks until you hit 2 or 3 before using it, unless you're about to run out of song time. Moving on to level 54 is a unique weapon skill called Imperial Arrow. This weapon skill is unique in that it's off the global cooldown, so you'll be able to use this between other weapon skills like Heavy Shot and Straight Shot. This is a good skill to use Barrage with in order to deal massive damage. At level 56, we learn Iron Jaws. This skill is a godsend as it'll refresh the duration on your Venomous and Wind Bites to maximum. Be sure to use this whenever your dot timer is starting to run out on an enemy to ensure that you'll continue doing damage over time consistently. Next up, at level 58, we learn Warden's Peen. This ability will either prevent or remove a detrimental status effect, like stun or poison, on yourself or a party member. It's a quick way to help your party out if someone gets a bad status effect. Now for the final Heavensward ability, we have Sidewinder at level 60. This ability will do minimal damage normally, however if you have both your dots up on a target, it'll do more than double the damage it would normally. Now at level 62 we get our first Stormblood ability, Troubadour. This ability will have a different effect depending on which song you're playing when you use it. For Mage's Ballad, it'll increase your party's hit points by 15%. Army's Paean will decrease physical damage taken by 10%, and Wanderer's Minuet will decrease magical damage taken by 10%. Now at level 64, we learn Caustic and Stormbite. These are direct upgrades to your 2 original dots, and will replace them entirely once you get to this point. Each now has a higher initial potency, as well as a higher amount of damage dealt over time. Use these as you would Wind and Venomous Bite. Moving up to level 66, we learn Nature's Min. Nature's Min increases healing dealt to a target by 20%. It's a very useful utility that will greatly help healers throughout a fight. Finally, level 70. We made it, guys, good job! Now we can learn our final weapon skill, Refulgent Arrow. This skill does a lot of damage and should be used any time that it's available. However, it's locked behind a Straighter Shot proc, otherwise it would be way too powerful. Be sure to use Barrage with this ability so you can fire 3 Refulgent arrows for the price of 1 proc. Next up, we'll move into the passive traits of the job. The first passive trait you get is Heavier Shot at level 8. This will give you a 20% chance to gain a Straighter Shot proc every time that you use Heavy Shot. Straighter Shot will guarantee a critical hit on your next Straight Shot, or allow you to use Refulgent Arrow. Next up, we have Enhanced Dexterity and Increased Action Damage. Each of these will basically improve the damage you do passively as you level up. At level 64, we'll get Bite Mastery. This is the trait that will automatically upgrade your Venomous and Wind Bites to Caustic and Stormbite. Finally, at level 68, we gain Enhanced Imperial Arrow. This allows you to guarantee a repertoire stack every time you use Imperial Arrow to whichever song you're in. It slightly changes how you use Imperial Arrow, but it's only for the better. Next, we'll move into the role action abilities. These are specific actions that are suited for your role as a ranged damage dealer. The first ability we learn is Second Wind. It's a quick 500 potency self-heal that heals more based on your current attack power. This is affected by raging strikes and other damage increasing buffs, so it can heal a reasonable amount quite easily. The next ability is Foot Graze. Foot Graze will bind your target in place and cancel your auto attacks on that target. The bind is broken whenever you auto attack or use a damaging ability on it, so be careful not to hit it afterwards if you're trying to run. After Foot Graze, we get Leg Graze as our next ability. It applies a 40% heavy to the target, making it so that they move much more slowly towards you. This is useful if you're trying to keep away from your target, but still trying to defeat it. At level 20, we gain access to Peloton. This is a buff that will grant increased movement speed outside of combat. Personally, I like using this because it helps me get through dungeons faster, but in high-end raid content, you won't want to take this since you'll always be in combat. At level 24, we gain access to Invigorate. This is a great skill that will restore your TP by 400, making it so that you can continue fighting throughout longer fights. Next, at level 32, we learn Tactician. This is an AoE buff that restores the TP of yourself and party members over its duration. It will also reduce your enmity by half, so it's a great way to keep enemies off of you if your tank isn't keeping hate on them. Level 36, we gain Refresh. Refresh is the same as Tactician, but instead of restoring TP, it'll restore MP. Be sure to use this for your healers and your casters, as they'll love you for it, especially if anyone has to raise a fallen player. At level 40, Head Graze becomes available. This is a quick 1-second silence that will interrupt certain casts. It's a useful utility to interrupt enemies that can't be stunned, but its usefulness is limited when compared against all enemies in the game. It's very useful for the ones that can be interrupted though, so please keep this in mind when you're going into raids. At level 44, Arm Graze becomes available, which is a short-range stun. This is much more applicable to a wider range of enemies in the game, making it easier to interrupt more enemies' skills. However, some enemies can't be stunned, which would make the other utilities a better option. Finally, at level 48, we get access to Palisade. Palisade is a targeted ability that will reduce the target's physical damage taken by 20%. Damn, that's some good mitigation. Great for supporting your tank if they're about to take a huge hit, as well as taking stress away from your healers who won't have to heal as much. Thanks for joining me on my introduction to Bard. What'd you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. My next video will go over Bard rotation and priorities and how to fit into a group. If you like this video, please leave a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe. If you want to share with your friends, that would be awesome and I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, take care and have fun in Stormblood.